Hello, I'm Akua Jamfi, co-founder of S.O.U.L Fest, and we're delighted to team up with Disney and Pixar to present a really special panel ahead of the UK release of their brilliant film S.O.U.L. Please welcome filmmakers Pete Docter, Kemp Powers, and producer Dana Murray as they discuss the process of making S.O.U.L and the progress of diverse representation in animation.
Thanks so much. Wishing we could all be together in the same room, but we're really happy to be here today. I'm Dana Murray, the producer of S.O.U.L, which comes out this fall. And we've been working on this film for 4 years, and it's been quite a journey. Learned about jazz music, about Black culture, and about ourselves. To tell you how it all started, here's Pete.
Hey everybody, I'm Pete Docter, a director here. I've wanted to be an animator my whole life. In fact, when I was a kid, my friends were out playing soccer or going on dates. I was in my room making animated cartoons. I started at Pixar in 1990, where I helped create Toy Story. I got to direct Monsters, Inc., Up, and Inside Out. I really feel like, making animated films is what I was born to do. And yet, there are some days where I find myself wondering, cartoons? Really? Is this what I'm meant to be doing with my limited time on Earth? That actually became the root of our story, believe it or not. A new soul that hasn't been born looks down on Earth with skepticism and says, is all that living down there really worth it? And to convince this soul, we thought, let's bring in a character who has already lived to show what's so great about life. So the basic concept of the film was formed. A soul who doesn't want to live meets a soul who doesn't want to die. But if we were going to make a film about souls, our first problem was, what does a soul look like? So we did a lot of research. We looked at the teachings of many philosophies and traditions around the world. And what we found was that most described a soul as vapor, non-physical, formless, breath, air, all very interesting, but not helpful. How do you draw air? I mean, if we're going to film something about souls, we had to put something on the screen.
With this in mind, we started to explore what a soul might look like. A lot of different artists at Pixar took a crack at it. They came up with some really cool, interesting ideas. We felt we needed more humanity, like expressions and attitudes.
Yeah, the clear eyes and faces we felt made our characters more appealing and easier to see what they were thinking, which is crucial for animation.
Yeah, and some of these look too much like a ghost. So we thought, souls represent the full potential of who we are inside. Maybe we could use color to show that. We added line work to help define edges that might otherwise be too fuzzy to see clearly. After months and months, we finally found our soul characters, and we were so thrilled that we got to work with Jamie Foxx, who voiced Joe, and Tina Fey in the role of 22, the reluctant soul.
Okay, but the soul world is only half of our story, because to convince 22 that life was worth it, we realized that a lot of our film needed to be about Joe's life on Earth. We needed something that Joe could do that showed the promise of life, something that we'd all really root for. We hit on musician. We realized that jazz was the perfect representation of what we were trying to say in the film. It was the perfect way to talk about life and what we do with it. But if our main character plays jazz, or as one of our consultants, Dr. Jeanette Cole, calls it, Black improvisational music, we felt our main character needed to be Black. To help us find Joe, we were lucky to find acclaimed screenwriter and playwright Kemp Powers.
Thanks a lot, Pete. Hey, everybody, I'm Kemp. When I came on board S.O.U.L a couple of years ago, I was really drawn to the Joe character, even though he wasn't fleshed out and really needed a lot more fleshing out. Thankfully, Joe and I had a lot in common. That's part of what drew me to him. Joe is 45 years old. I'm also in my mid-40s. Joe lives in New York, which is my hometown. Joe's a musician. Coincidentally, not only was I a music critic and a musician myself, but my son is even named after the jazz great Charles Mingus. Bringing a lot of depth to Joe was the job, but in order to do that, it took more than just me. It took a lot of people who had to dive really deep. We had lots and lots of meetings and discussions about Joe. Where did he grow up? Who were the important people in his life? What made him tick? One place we visited was a public school in Queens, New York, since that's where Joe is supposed to be teaching. Research trips are a big part of the developmental process, and we did lots of them. I thought over the course of our character's journey, how important it would be for them to pass through what I believe is one of the most authentically Black spaces in the community, the barbershop. Now, as specific as parts of the story were to me, one of the things I pointed out in the beginning is that I don't represent every single Black man's experience. So we partnered with a bunch of consultants on this film who became our internal culture trust. And we turned to tons of experts outside of Pixar, many talented music teachers and working jazz musicians. And these consultants were asked to do a lot more than just rubber stamp our ideas. we invited them into the entire creative process, looking at everything from character designs to sets to reviewing reels of the film itself. Throughout it all, our cultural consultants helped and challenged us to make our characters and world as authentic as possible. In fact, a few of them are here with us today, and we thought it would be great if you could hear from them directly about what they brought to the film.
Hey, we're excited to have Afton Corbin and Robert Graham Jones here to join us to talk about the Culture Trust. So I guess the first question is, what exactly is the Culture Trust?
So the Culture Trust is a group of people that we had on S.O.U.L, of African-American artists and individuals throughout the studio to come and be consultants and help discuss the process of creating an authentic African-American character in a believable world and setting. So we met, I think it ended up being like once or twice a month to just discuss how to make Joe feel like he's a believable person in our world and this believable African-American New Yorker.
So how did it feel like the first time that they basically gathered all the Black employees of Pixar together? Were you stressed? Were you worried about, trying to represent Black people appropriately?
Well,
it's pretty easy.
I thought it was quite an experience being on the Cultural Trust and to amass all the Black employees with one kind of central goal to keep an eye on what was going on with S.O.U.L and the characters and the story. It was really quite an amazing experience.
Did you feel pressure?
There was definitely pressure. And it's interesting because when you're asked to review how it's like to be in the Black experience, there's so many different takes on that. And so I thought it was interesting that everybody came at it with a very different flavor, which was really good.
Everyone has different perspectives in life. Just because we all come from the same community, we all have different experiences. So it was very interesting. It was challenging to see not what was the right answer, but what would be different conclusions that felt good for all of us. Then I think we started to get into a rhythm, and it really became a good meeting point for all of us just to see how we felt and bounce ideas off of each other.
One thing that kind of surprised me was the generational element of it. Afton, me, and Robert represent three very different generations of Black people. So in addition to being from different parts of the country, we're also generationally very, very different. So coming up with a consensus, I think, was one of the...
Well, and a lot of times I think that we never necessarily reached a consensus, but I don't think that was really necessary.
Yeah, I think it was kind of entertaining when it would come down to clothing or style. You'd be like, yeah, that's hip. And we'd be like, ah.
I remember we had long discussions about Dorothea Williams, who's the saxophone player. She's like the great band leader. And what kind of clothes would she wear? We talked about that for a long time. Remember that?
Yeah. I think another thing that was we talked about was whether or not Curly was going to wear a chain. And I was like, yeah, nobody wears chains anymore. I don't think it's in anymore. I don't think people wear chains. So it became this huge generational gap.
There were pretty declarative statements too. Like some people would say nobody wears chains anymore. And then Kemp would be like, well, yeah, half of my aunts and uncles that wear chains. So. Yeah.
What are you trying to say about me?
I mean, your aunts and uncles, though, Curly's in his 20s. So.
Can you guys talk about something specifically in the film that you think evolved because of the trust that you're pretty proud of?
So one of the scenes that I was the most excited to see grow was Libba's tailor shop. So there's a scene in which Joe Gardner has to confront his mother, and it wasn't quite feeling truthful yet or authentic. The setup didn't feel right. It was a bunch of aunties and friends of Libba that were sitting outside, and I was like, that doesn't quite feel like a scenario that I've seen or felt. And with the help of the Culture Trust, we're able to make it into a scene where the women were inside and they were giving Joe a hard time and demanding kisses and things of that nature, and it helped build it up into this really familiar family type of atmosphere that created for a lot of humor. It was a good win.
It was also comforting to have the three of you, and there were other artists, people who are artists, because the Culture Trust went across the board. We had people in accounting and finance and all sorts of things. So it was really comforting to have that mix of people, kind of fresh eyes, but also, as I say, artists like yourselves that could come in and judge things aesthetically.
I think that was something that we were really trying to be cautious and careful of, to be respectful of design, but also have a fun design that showcases Black features and doesn't try to water anything down. So that I think that there's a lot of struggle back and forth with the design of Joe himself.
It's a little difficult because animation is always exaggerating things. So you want to be able to exaggerate, but in a way that doesn't tip the scales into this whole other realm.
Obviously, what we're trying to do with all of our movies is put our own lives up on the screen. Are there parts of the film that resonate with you specifically?
Well, what really comes alive for me is when they go into the club, because I've spent a lot of time in jazz clubs, and it feels so right in there, down in the half note.
Yeah. That makes me happy to hear.
Robert, it was cool when I came on board and met you, because a lot of people might not know this, but I think you might be the longest serving Black Pixar employee.
Oh,
how long have you been at Pixar?
I've been at Pixar for 22 years.
Wow.
22 years.
How does this film feel to you? How important is this to you to finally see a Black lead character represented in a Pixar film?
I have to say that I am so proud of this movie. S.O.U.L is just an absolutely amazing accomplishment. For me, it's not only the characters, the story, but we have a musical potpourri of some of my favorite pieces of music. Body and Soul, one of my all-time favorite pieces of music, is in this movie. And I can't express how excited I am for this to be unleashed onto the world.
Yeah, I remember we went to the audience preview to once the movie was getting close to completion in the story phase, and we've had an all-Black audience screening, and I was feeling kind of like emotional of like, oh my goodness, this is so crazy, this is so exciting, this is actually happening, and can't wait for this thing to get released so I can show it to my family.
That was the most nervous time for me on the whole film.
Me too, man. Yeah, I couldn't even smile until the screening was done. I was so stressed. I was like, this is what we've all been working for years, to not, you really, it would kill you to have the audience that you're representing on screen, that community, not appreciate it. So I just think that it was really personal for me.
And the sort of response, the love we got back was, I think, a receipt of the work that the Culture Trust did.
Yeah. Robert, Afton, thanks so much to both of you for just giving folks a little bit of an insight into the Culture Trust and for being a part of this S.O.U.L journey.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And now we have a special surprise for you. One of our wonderful cast members, Richard Ayowati, who plays one of the counselors from the S.O.U.L world, would like to come say hi. Come on in, Richard.
Thanks, Pete. I'm in the same room as you. I'm Richard Ayowati. I've just come back from a Dexys Midnight Runners convention. I play Jerry in the film. Jerry is a guide in the S.O.U.L world, helping new souls discover their purpose in life. I am given the task of finding 22, I'm just extemporizing this, a mentor to help discover and appreciate life on Earth.
Meet 22. I don't want to go to Earth. Stop fighting this. I don't want to.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks for being a very special part of creating this film and for the little taste of fun you can expect from Joe and 22. You know, making this movie was an incredible journey for us, exploring not only Joe's life and his purpose, but our own. We hope that you'll come with us on this funny and emotional journey, a look into what we're born to do with our time on Earth, as seen through a movie we call S.O.U.L.